just leave it a minute.
Oh.
And people, we are ready to start. It's 9 minutes past 7.
I'll be finished at 9 tonight, Carl.
Oh, hang on a minute. I'm supposed to be doing the class here, right? I decide when we finish, right?
Before you plan anything that might include me, it might be a nuisance to you.
Roger, look, between you and I, with nobody else watching, right, you know I don't like you, right? You know I never want to see you again, Roger. But as far as I'm concerned, look, Rod, don't take it the wrong way, right? But I do love you deeply.
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
So hang on a minute. Roger, what are you doing with us tonight? You're not supposed to be on the elite class on a Wednesday.
I gave you a text, sent you a text advising you that I would be on the Wednesday this week because of unseen circumstances.
Yeah, well, we don't want.
You didn't really, report anything back.
Yeah, Roger, you know I'm not
on.
gonna. You know I'm not going to report anything back because you're special to me, Roger. But on behalf of me, I would like to say thank you guys for joining us on this wonderful event. The first Wednesday of the year for our archaeological gang. I do believe Anne is going to be joining us tonight, but she hasn't turned up. Pat's not going to be with us because her husband's not very well. And Henry is away, so there's the 5 of us, and I appreciate everybody getting their shekels over as well. Now, I haven't got my usual bits and pieces of news. I know Goff and Henry have sent me a few things, which will be digested for next week. Somebody did. I had a link about a lecture that's going to be taking place in to do with the Chilean excavation, which I'm not going to mention because we'll be doing that again in this. So I thought the best thing to do is to try and move into Roman era Britain. It's quite appropriate now doing that simply because I've restarted posting my series on YouTube that is looking at various stone remains that survive across Roman era Britain, and there's quite a lot of stone sites across Britain. I've come across about 120 localities that I've been doing in my series. There's thousands and thousands of earthen sites in Britain, but in regards to stone sites, we're doing pretty well. So I thought what we would do is very much get into the vein of the Julius Caesar type stuff, and with Richard wanting to go at 9 o'clock, Roger wanted to go at 9 o'clock, Goff wanted to go at 9 o'clock. It leaves me with Bill to have a chat at the end. So let's just crack on. So
Carl, if I get to 9 o'clock, I'll be lucky too.
Oh, for God's sake!
What?
Under the weather.
Right.
I'll till 9 o'clock.
Right. Well,
Carl, get on with it.
I'm trying to get on with it.
You keep gassing. Go on.
That's it. Get in there. Well done, Rich.
You're supposed to be criticising me, Roger, not you. Richard, any news from you this week?
No, nothing from me. Nothing from me.
Bill, what about you?
A few things.
Oh, go for it.
First of all, in the news the last 2 days from Norfolk, discovering the Carnix, this Iron Age battle trumpet, which we've now reconstructed.
Which is like the big long horn, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Head on the top with a tongue which flaps a bit, to give it resonance, etc.
I would like to do that next week, so I'll look that up. So they've got a reconstruction. Yeah, good, excellent. Go for it. That's one. Yeah.
That's one. The second one is I talked to you about these transcripts about the Bristol prison riots in 1831.
Have they arrived?
No. Have you sent them?
I've paid 25 quid for them, so they should be there by now.
Okay.
but I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'll look this up on my device now to see where they are. But anyway,
So I'll wait. I'll wait until they arrive before I send you a check. Okay. I don't want to send 2 checks to you.
no, that's fine. Don't worry. Anything else from you? I'm checking to see where they are now. My
Enjoy
friend.
that. Good. Go.
Go on, Bill. Anything else?
There was something, Carl, but it slipped my memory. So carry on regardless to the rest.
Right. So
Oh, yes, I want.
basically,
Sorry. Happy birthday, Carl. That's what I meant.
well, yeah. Thank you very,
You a
very
card
much.
and a present.
Oh, you know, Carl.
I thought about sending you a new trowel, but I thought, no, he's got
Oh,
plenty
that
of
new trowel would have been great. You delayed it. We need new trowels. My birthday is on the 5th of January, as some of you already know. Bill, it says that these it's on my device. It says that the Bristol riot reports have been dispatched, but obviously I haven't got to it. If they don't turn up, then I will be getting a refund off these people. And
Okay, I'll be patient.
Bill, can you please contact me and by the end of the week and let me know if they've arrived or not? Just phone me. If they haven't, I will chase these up.
Okay. I will phone you and leave a message on your answer phone, because you never answer unless you change your ways.
Oh,
Well, look, I can't believe this. Everyone's having a go at me. Bill, can I just say one thing? As your as we've just had post today from the last 5 days, so because
Okay.
nobody's been able to get to us, so
I'll
it's
be
probably
patient, Carl.
because of the snow. So
Okay, I'll be patient. And more snow tomorrow, of course, so there should be more disruption again tomorrow.
oh well,
Okay,
I can't do anything because we got no grit in the bin now. Anything from you, Roger?
no, I'm finishing at 9. So,
Goff,
we're all finishing at 9.
Goff, anything you want to say?
Just the article I sent to this morning. When you're going to deal with that next week, I think.
I'm going to deal with that next week, yeah, because there's a few things that don't fit in with today, and obviously as we haven't got time, whatever. So I would like to start off with mentioning that hopefully you've all seen the videos I put out over Christmas, and obviously there were 5 lectures altogether, and if you haven't seen them, they're still on the YouTube channel. So anyway, let's just see where we can go with this today. So it was quite a nice little bit of discussion last night, and we've got entitled The Caesar Invasion. But we're not going to do it the usual way. We're not going to basically say in 56 BC the Romans decided to invade Britain for the first time. There was lots of storms, and Julius Caesar didn't go ahead with it, and then he had a little bit of a break, and then he came back in 55 BC, and there was a miniature Roman fleet. We're not going to do that today. We're going to do that again in a more structured manner. So we're gonna structure this in a way that we'll start off with the archaeological evidence for Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain. And one question I asked somebody last night to deliberately ask me was, Carl, do you actually believe that the Julius Caesar invasions actually occurred? And that person then said, you're given the impression that they didn't. And I basically said, well, they didn't occur in the manner that history tells us. I think that's what probably my full answer would be. And one of the things that we need to do is a mixed bag. And let's just check an image of the wonderful Julius Caesar up before we go any further. And by the way, Julius Caesar was nearly 56 when he died. Right, don't even go there. That's something else. We did something quite weird last night, but that's life. So we've got all these images here. So we got them, and there we go. Me and Shetland, Julius Caesar. Now, when we think about the Julius Caesar invasions, this is very different from if we want to compare it with Boudicca. And what I mean by that is that we got the Boudiccan revolt, roughly about 60 61 AD, right? AD 60 61, And then years before, we've got the Julius Caesar campaign to supposedly invade Britain. And the point is that when we look at the Julius Caesar campaign, the after effect is what we're seeing in the history and the archaeological evidence to say that the Julius Caesar campaign actually did occur in one way, shape, or form. And we're not based upon Julius Caesar's written accounts. So the only evidence that we've really got for this campaign, other than going deeper in, because this is my introduction, is that Julius Caesar tells us of the invasions, right? And if the work of Julius Caesar never happened and it was destroyed, right? Suddenly in the archaeologists would be thinking, hang on a minute, why is Britain suddenly looking towards Rome well before AD 43? Something must have happened. So that's the first bit of my introduction. So when we go to the likes of Boudicca, and we see that if the documentation that nobody wrote about Boudicca at all, we would know that something quite dramatic happened roughly around AD 60 in the archaeological record, all across the likes of the Iceni territory, Norfolk, all that area. We've got archaeological evidence from Colchester through to St Albans and Londinium and a few other localities, and we got lots of other weird stuff, which we're gonna, when we do Boudica, we got more of that stuff to look at, right? And thanks to one or two archaeological contacts that I've been getting information from. So the point is that initially you could look at Julius Caesar as we're doing now, and the archaeological evidence for Julius Caesar's invasion is something that has puzzled archaeologists for a long time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the unusual step of saying that the conclusion I made last night was that the archaeological evidence that people are looking for involving the Julius Caesar invasion is not the same archaeological evidence that we would find from AD 43 onwards, right? And this is the unusual thing that I sort of come to the conclusion with last night. And it's basically to do with the resistance that Julius Caesar come across when he came over physically in 55 and 54 BC. Equally, I would like to argue that there might be other times in history that Britain may have been invaded by the Romans before Julius Caesar, where we start to see spikes with interest in Roman Britain, with interest in Britannia, on the case of the Romans. So the key question is, can archaeology confirm Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain, or are we reliant mainly on his own propaganda? And the answer is that archaeology is difficult, and it's not just about his own propaganda. And those are two sort of answers to that question, really. So Britain before Rome. Now, when we think about Britain before Rome, we've really looked at Britain before Rome. We've looked at Europe before Rome. We've looked at Rome before Rome, right? We've looked at all those different aspects, right? And one thing that can be said is that I was thinking the other day that for example, Lampeter University Archaeological Department is no more. It's gone. It's finished. It's evaporated, right? And I thought, well, if anyone ever started an archaeological university in Lampeter again, wouldn't it be great just to look at archaeology from the point of view of the archaeology, not looking at the history? So we rely heavily on looking at Roman Britain, looking at historical evidence. But when you remove the historical evidence, I think the archaeology gets more and more interesting because it makes more sense. Because what we're trying to do sometimes when we're looking at the history of Roman era Britain, we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and it really doesn't fit lots of times. And when I'm looking around Roman era Britain, which I have done for a big chunk of my life, what I do see is that the archaeology in Britain is not the same as what we see in Europe. It's very, very different. And what has survived is very, very different from lots of different perspectives and points of view. So again, when we're thinking about this and we're thinking about the invasion of our land by the Romans in 55 and 54 BC, is it an invasion? Britain in the late Iron Age, for example, was a tribal society with lots of tribes that we know from names that they call themselves, like the Catavellani on their coins, the CATU or V, you would see them on coins, the Iceni, ECE, we might see the Trinovantes, but we might see lengths of the Atrebates within their own context with the own names that they call us themselves. But in regards to tribes that are totally fictitious, like the Silures, we don't see them attested before the Roman period. It's just that names that the Romans have given these people. But those names that I've already mentioned, the Catavellani, the Trinovantes, are names that those people actually call themselves. The key to understanding Roman era Britain is the sense of we don't have a written record that the Britons have actually written down before the Julius Caesar invasion in the sense that we would think of academic writing, right? When we think about academic writing, we think about the works of Julius Caesar, we think about the works of Tacitus, we think about the works of Pliny and all these other people. And maybe if we want to fit into the events of 55 and 54 BC, and if not 56 BC, the Britons were thinking, hang on a minute, is something going to happen? And what's those ships in the English Channel? It wouldn't have been called the English Channel back then, but the point is that these people might be reacting to the invasions of Julius Caesar and creating their own records in a way that we haven't been able to understand so far. And that is a key point. So it's more to do with archaeology versus history. So again, what's happening is that we do start to think that we're looking around this landscape and we're thinking that this land, this place with which archaeologists have loved to put maps like this together. So when archaeologists turn around and say, oh, actually British people didn't have towns and roadways and stuff, they did, but not in the typical Romanized way of looking at towns and roads and things like that. So one of the things that was really at an end when we think about the Romans, which really kicks off the narrative, is that the Romans weren't coming across defended hill forts in 55 BC, because most hill forts in the southern area of Britain were abandoned. Me and Bill have been hand in hand together to the likes of Maiden Castle and Hod Hill, and one thing that we would see about those sites is that they were abandoned just before Julius Caesar and his supposed invasions of Britain. So there would be no big sieges, and we're thinking of these massive sites, with nothing going on in them around this time, but there had been 50 years before. So this whole sort of, we've got indigenous coinage, we've got, and one thing that is really a talking point is that when you think of like the Trinovantes, when you think about the Cantiaci people on the map there, you think about something like the Catavellani people, we're starting to see that they are thinking of Rome already before 55, 54 BC. Why is that? Had there been another invasion? You're not going to get this from another commentator, right? But because I'm doing this from what I've learned and what I've been educated to do with the universities that I've been to, is that sometimes you've got to, like the writer Tim Ingold, where you put all the layers together of history, and you start to see a common narrative. And the common narrative is that there's that you need to look more at the archaeology that isn't there and the events that are occurring to tell the narrative that Julius Caesar is supposedly written that is documented that everybody believes. Because one thing that me and Richard, we went to Barry Boys Comprehensive School, and I know me and Richard are a few years apart in time, but me and Richard were taught the same thing in the Barry Boys Comprehensive School. Julius Caesar invaded Britain. We'd have had our textbooks. We would have heard the history teachers tell us all about the likes of Julius Caesar's invasions, and nobody told us any more than what Julius Caesar was telling us, which is not the best way of looking at history. It's like, for example, looking at Mein Kampf and thinking that that tells us everything about the Second World War, which is completely wrong, right? The archaeology tells us a lot more than Mein Kampf from the Second World War. It's like what you've got to do. You've got to really understand the causes and effects and what's going on the ground. So what I am saying, in effect, that after 54 BC, Britain had changed. There was no Roman military presence in Britain, but Britain had changed. So that would indicate that the Romans had come over here, if not previously as well. So, but again, if any commentator on this would agree with the following statement, why Julius Caesar matters. He's the first commentator. He's the first one that comments on Roman contact with Britain. This is key to what we're talking about, right? So that's really important. It's what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another analogy. No, not from the Second World War, folks. I'm going to make another analogy. When we look at Plato, Plato in the mid 300s years BC, Plato is actually telling us about Atlantis, right? He's the only commentator that tells us about Atlantis. Then every Tom, Dick and Harry, including Graham Hancock, starts talking about the likes of Atlantis, right? But then we're basing books on single lines and statements written by Plato. I hope I didn't say Pliny then. Plato. So Plato in the mid 300s. So Plato is telling us the first person to talk about Atlantis, right? If Plato's works of Atlantis didn't survive and had been erased off the earth, right, nobody would be talking about Atlantis today, right? Except we do have stuff in the archaeological record to tell us that there were strange events going on in the year 1628 BC, where the entire Minoan civilization was wiped out. So is that what we're talking about with Atlantis? But if Plato had never written about it, then we'd just be looking at the archaeology. So this is the sort of same analogy that I'm looking at with Julius Caesar. So Julius Caesar, we'll look at this again. We're not today, but this is more of a general thing tonight, and it really fits in with what we're doing in the time and people's interests and the five of us here tonight. So Julius Caesar, a politician, general, propagandist. There was another question that was, and the reason it's easy for me to have Tuesday because it makes me get to the point a lot quicker. So one of the things was Julius Caesar invading Britain for Rome, right? The answer is no. Julius Caesar was invading Britain because it was there, and Julius Caesar was invading Britain to make a point. That's for me what happened. Julius Caesar had command of the northern armies of the Republic of Rome at that stage. He wasn't a dictator, he was just a general, right? And then he became a dictator. He needed this to sort of as a propaganda tool, invade this thing north. Now, the one point to be made here is that nobody had any idea how big Britain was. And I don't think none of us in this class have walked from Cornwall, Land's End to John O'Groats. But the fact of the matter is, Britain is a big place, right? If you compare it with Canada, it's small. But the point is Rome had no idea of the size of Britain. So when Julius Caesar's marching down the streets of Rome in late 54 BC, 53 BC, and he's walking through Rome and he's got this triumph, and they say, "Oh, well, you've done a wonderful job. You've conquered Britain." As far as people in Rome were aware, Britain was the size of the Isle of Wight. So nobody could question Julius Caesar. And to be honest with you, it's like the flat Earth theory. Prove that the Earth is round, or prove that the Earth is flat. You can think of one thing, or you can think of the other. And this is what was the situation at the time. People just believed he conquered Britain. A place the size of the Isle of Wight, job done, is fine. So some people may have thought, it wasn't much of an achievement. It's this tiny little island off the French coast, right? Most people in Rome would never in their entire lifetime go north to look at the straits, look at the sort of 20-mile straits over to Britain. So they had no idea what Julius Caesar was talking about, except the works of Julius Caesar, the commentary de Bellicio Gallicio, commentary de Bellicio Gallicio, and that would basically, he's talking about in the Deo Bello Gallicio, in two of the books in that, there were a number of books that made up the work, right? His tome, as it were. And they were books 4 and 5, and so in other words, in book 1, 2, and 3 is writing about something else, and then 6, 7, and whatever is writing about other stuff. So you can just imagine it's a footnote in Julius Caesar's history, right? And so the historical source problem, and when you're looking at this, right, a major point was also made last night. Thank you very much, folks, last night for giving me this material. So one of the things last night was that what Julius Caesar was doing was what has always happened, right? People coming over to this country and then going back, right? So I'm not making any political statements there, but what I'm trying to say is that when you look at the map, there are tribes like the Parisii you can see it on the map there, which next door to the bit that says peoples of southern Britain. The tribal people known as the Parisii and the tribal people known as the Belgae, they've got sort of tribal equivalents on the continent, right? With these groups of people that come over who settled in an area and then some of them went back and whatever. So in many ways we could be talking about, so there's always been people coming over to Britain. What the reason why the Julius Caesar stuff is big news is twofold. Well, threefold. It was done by a famous person in history, Julius Caesar. It was done by a to-be massive empire in history, and 3, it's relevant to us, right? On the continent, Julius Caesar's invasion makes no odds. Nobody really cares, right? But to us, it does, because it's a major period in history. Physical invasions of Britain, testated, written physical invasions of Britain, don't account to more than 5 that we can count on our hands. We can think, right, the Julius Caesar invasions, the invasions of AD 43. We're not really sure about the Anglo-Saxons anymore. We can think about the Vikings, and then somewhere along the line we can think about, we can think about the 14th of October in 1066. We haven't had many invasions that have been really written about in history, right? And some of them are quite sort of off the edge there. So when we think about this, we think about these 2 big expeditions that actually succeeded, because the first expedition of 56 BC failed, and the 55 BC and 54 BC were successful. There's one point. This is Pegwell Bay, for example, in Kent. So the point is that when we're thinking about momentous events in history, right? What we've got to really do is think about, if we go, let's go back to the image of Julius Caesar again. So we're thinking, right, okay, Julius Caesar, there he is, and we're thinking, this guy, right, his invasion left little to no physical archaeological evidence from 55, 54, but the repercussions were massive afterwards, right? But then again, if you want to compare this with Caligula, and I'm a big fan of Caligula, a real big fan of Caligula, right? Basically because he's completely misunderstood in history. So and so am I. But the point is that I like Caligula because there's more archaeological evidence to say that Caligula invaded Britain, right, than there is for Julius Caesar, and initially for the first few months and weeks of the invasion of Claudius in AD 43, right? Caligula builds massive barracks and harbors on the northern French coast to invade Britain, right? That exists today. That's more archaeological evidence than most people, right? We've got massive works of the likes of Caligula, right? But in regards to history, right, Caligula is dismissed from history because nobody likes him. Everyone likes Julius Caesar. Everyone loves the guy. Everyone loves Claudius, stuttering Claudius. I don't know why, because it was a shivering wreck who was a bit of a coward. But then again, that type of figure is the guy who was responsible for the murder of Caligula in the first place. So Claudius wants his name to be up in lights, and the name of the dementi of the removing of Caligula to be removed from the fact that he did anything in Britain at all. So when we think about Julius Caesar, he's writing about these expeditions, the successes and failures. He's writing about the Britons with chariots. He's writing about the fierce resistance, and he's writing about the submission of the tribes. So if we take those three areas, if he landed at Pegwell Bay, which is one of three localities, if he did land at Pegwell Bay, right, one thing that we didn't question in school, right, and the one thing that we were told in school is that the Britons at this stage still jumped on the backs of chariots, going all the way across Britain, right? Well, what's the chariot thing? Well, Julius Caesar says that the Britons are still using chariots, but then most commentators in Europe are saying that people have stopped using chariots 200 years before. Right, so the archaeological evidence tells us at Wet Wang Slag, up in Yorkshire, that chariot burials, that people are still using chariots in the Iron Age in Britain, not so many years off this event of 54 BC, and we've got chariot burials in West Wales more recently. But those dates are not really at this stage, right? They're slightly before, right? So is he making the chariot thing up? Is he just embellishing history? What's the chariots? There's no evidence of chariots really being used at this stage, right? But he decides to chuck it in. Okay, we'll park that and we'll do that one again, right, folks? Fierce resistance. Well, he's going to say there's going to be fierce resistance, but we haven't got a single Roman burial from this period, 54 BC. We've got no military defenses that the Romans built at this stage surviving anywhere at all, except I will be looking at something that tantalizingly may be a set of Roman defenses, but we're not doing that tonight. And he's going to want to say that there's fierce resistance, right? However, right, if he's got fierce resistance, then surely these people are going to be protected in bank and ditched earthworks that the Romans would have built all the way across Kent, and we haven't got a single one of them surviving. So the one thing that I did last night, I basically said, right, the point I want to make, which I haven't put in my slides deliberately because it lets me look. So we've got that there. And what I did was I typed in Roman marching camps, and I want to make a point here, right? So we've got Roman marching camps. And by the way, with my series online, because Roman marching camps are made of earth, right? None of these feature in my series that I'm doing online, right? So we've got temporary Roman marching camps. There's a load written there. So if we get the images, these marching camps, for example, right? You've got them all, the reconstructed versions on there. You can see here, there's loads of stuff online about marching camps. But when we think about aerial views of marching camps, right, they look very different on the ground. So if we type in aerial views, right, aerial view, and hopefully we'll come up with something straight away, like we did last night. Right, we do have some aerial views of marching camps there. So what we've got... which one shall I grab on here? Oh, that's the one we did last night there. Right, now this is a marching camp in Scotland. Right, now these are marching camps associated with Trajan coming into Hadrianic invasions of Scotland, right? And you can clearly see, right, that marching camp there, which was relatively temporary, right, probably used for a few weeks, probably used for about a month, which is not the red line, the one in the middle there, because the red line indicates sort of marching camps on top of marching camps. This is what the Romans did. They if you go to Landrin.common, which again we'll visit again, when you go to Landrin.common, there's dozens and dozens of Roman marching camps which can be still seen today, but they were practice works, right? They weren't permanent. They were just built overnight, and then a few days later they may have built another one, right? And they abandoned that one, and this is what we're talking about. So the point is with marching camps is that if Julius Caesar is under constant attack and threat by the local people, which he talks about in his Deo Belgio Gallicio, we would find these things, There's thousands of these found across Britain from after AD 43, but there's not a single one surviving from Julius Caesar's invasion, right? So in other words, what we're doing is we're looking for the wrong evidence, and we're looking for the wrong evidence. Why? Because it's likely that the people of Britain were not really resisting the Roman army as Julius Caesar tells us, right? We don't have any remains of anything, no battlefields, no nothing. We could talk about the Battle of Medway again, but that's something else. But River Medway. But the fact of the matter is that it's likely that the Roman army marched across the landscape, and I'll tell you this, that each soldier had 2 bits of wood, right, which he'd have in his backpack, and those bits of wood would be crossed, and that would create as his part of the outline of a camp, right? So that would be sort of a tiny perimeter. If they were attacked at night, they could make up some kind of, they wouldn't dig a ditch, right? They wouldn't need to big bank. That's what that was for. So it's a great myth that the Romans marched every night and built a camp, because the Julius Caesar invasion tells us that, right? So what we're looking for is not what we're seeing after AD 43. In other words, what we're looking for is something that's not going to leave any signs of archaeological evidence. And this thing about submission of tribes, now this is one thing that this is all said, that the tribal people submitted to this wonderful guy, Julius Caesar. So Julius Caesar comes over and he basically says, right, submit. And they said, yeah, all right then, that's fine. So after 54 BC, within a few weeks, right, not tens of months, right, not the following year, because when Julius Caesar is invading, he's invading Britain at the end of the fighting season. Yes, I'm not talking rubbish. Throughout the medieval period, for example, 1,000 years later, there's something known as the fighting period, right? So this is why there's great criticism of Napoleon invading Russia when he did, right? In Europe, the fighting season ended around September, and after that point, nobody went to war, right? Apparently, right? That's the rule, right? Nobody fights, right? So it's likely that Julius Caesar's invasions in 55 and 54 BC were done and over in 2 months, right? So the point is, if Julius Caesar's receiving submission of, it said 10 tribes in Britain, right, including the King of Orkney, right, in his own work, right, 10 tribes of Britain, right, they submit to the Romans and they say, right, now you now rule over Britain, right, now go away, here's a bit of gold and statues of Lloyd George, just go. So Julius Caesar went and he took a few hostages, and those hostages went to Rome, and they were treated like they were probably sort of sons and daughters of dignitaries, more likely to be sons rather than daughters. Like, as you know, the Romans didn't like girls. So the point is that, and then you're thinking, hang on a minute, the King of Orkney, right? We're going to look at this really sensibly, right? So to walk from Land's End to John O'Groats, it takes 30 days, right? So if Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain was done and over and done with in 55 BC in 2 months, and 54 BC in 2 months. One, how did the King of Orkney know that Julius Caesar was invading Britain, right? Or actually mainland Britain? And why would he care? So Julius Caesar is writing this stuff up, and how much of it is fact and how much of it is fiction is more fiction than fact. But again, it's still a major event in our history. So the archaeological issue is Julius Caesar was writing for Rome. He wasn't writing for anybody else. He was justifying political ambition. As you know, from a modern point of view, right? And politicians, they don't leave much of a mark in history, do they? And we won't talk about certain figures. We don't do politics, Goff. But the point is, political ambitions don't leave much of a sign in the archaeological record, whoever you are, right? They add notes in history, right? So if we look at it that way, you'd actually start to see something. There's no British written counter narrative, and you might actually think that as there are people who are being educated in Britain, who are starting to think like the Romans and being buried like the Romans before 55 and 54 BC, right? You would think that one or two of these people are actually writing about Julius Caesar's invasion. it's probably likely that Julius Caesar's invasion was so insignificant in the mindsets of the Britons that they didn't bother writing about it, because there's this guy who looks really nice, he's fairly attractive, and Cleopatra thought that, and the point is that maybe what so why are we doing this today? We're doing this today because the whole point of looking at Roman era Britain is this very event, to try and understand this. So the teaching point with this is that archaeology must test Julius Caesar's claims, not assume them. We should not be assuming the historical record. To be honest with you, right? Let's just do another thing. The two of the boys were talking about, had a bit of a quiet Christmas. What's Christmas about? It's about the birth of Jesus Christ and all the rest of it. Some of you would argue that Jesus didn't exist, and I would argue that he did, because I've probably got enough in my mind to say that there are bits of evidence, but I don't believe in Christianity and all these other things. But some of you guys might believe in Christianity. But the point is lots of this stuff is about faith, right? We can't look at Julius Caesar's invasions based on faith. We've got to try and seek some of this, right? So the point is, if you believe in Jesus, then you should take it on, some of it on faith value rather than archaeological fact. But that's not the same as Julius Caesar, right? So where did Julius Caesar land the archaeological debate? Now, the point is, this is Pegwell Bay, right? And there is Pegwell Bay. It's basically there between Ramsgate and sort of the writing there, Sandwich. This is the most furthest southeastern point of the British Isles, right? When I say the furthest southeastern point, obviously there's more of a southern point, but this is southeastern, right? So in Kent, and the point is that, thinking about Pegwell Bay, this Pegwell Bay, the strong evidence about Pegwell Bay, right? And there's Pegwell Bay there. So, and the interesting thing about Pegwell Bay is what's written on this Ordnance Survey map. It basically says traditional site of the landing of the Saxons in AD 449. That's probably total poppycock. And the landing of St. Augustine in AD 597. That's probably more accurate. Well, if other people have landed there, why couldn't have no, there's not, as far as I know, a Viking ship there. But the point is that the whole thing about Pegwell Bay, right, is that this place that seems to be the place that lots of people land in history, right? And no sort of pro modern day thinking and things. We'll ignore all that stuff there. Anyway, Pegwell Bay proposed landing sites. This is in many ways, for archaeologists, the strongest piece location where the Romans may have landed. Now, what do we know about Pegwell Bay? Right. The first thing we know about Pegwell Bay is the bay was a hell of a lot larger in the Roman era, right? But it looked nothing like this. So the stuff on the right is all silted up, and that's like, the bay was a lot deeper. There's lots of land being reclaimed. It was much bigger, and obviously this side, you're going to be heading up to Ramsgate, and all the rest of it, which is heavily, people and buildings there today. So this landscape was very, very different. So where we're going to find the archaeology is much further over on the right, underneath all that sort of boggy, marshy landscape. And there are bits of things being found, interestingly enough, right? Hang on, Carl, you said there was no archaeological evidence, but no datable specific archaeological evidence to this period of Julius Caesar. Nothing's got a stamp on it saying, Julius Caesar was here, right? It would be helpful if it did, but it doesn't. So what we've got, again, this has always been a massive sheltered bay in antiquity, and it's where the Roman army would later land. And then, things would change after AD 43, and maybe at the time of Caligula, but that's another story. So what they've done is found within this landscape, dotted around this landscape, they found bits of late Iron Age weaponry, bits and pieces, right? Again, we'll look at that again. We're just doing a sort of overview at this minute, but little bits of Roman military equipment scattered, little bits here and there, which might indicate what? Well, lots of that military equipment looks slightly different from the stuff from AD 43. And the point is is that what we've got to think of is that this military equipment itself, is it from the Julius Caesar period of invasion, right? And again, we're going to look at that on another point. Can I just make a point? I know Bill has been to you've been to Islandawana, haven't you, Bill? I know
Yes,
you've been to
a couple of times, yes.
yeah, you've been to Rorke's Drift, I know. Oh, by the way, Alan was in touch the other day. He might be meeting up with me this year, Bill. So I'll give him your love. So
Alan. All right. Yeah, he's
yeah.
divorced now, of course, isn't he?
Or
was.
Well, this is Alan. I'll update you on that again. Right. Anyway, so anyway, yes. So that was another Michelle in that case. But anyway, the point.
It was. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Moving on, folks. Sorry. The Battle of Islandawana. So we're talking about January 1879, and we're thinking, right, Battle of Islandawana. Why is that relevant? Well, you go to the Battle of Islandawana site, and the only evidence to say that the battle ever took place there was these burial cromlechs of these, of the 1,500 British troops that are actually scattered and buried across the battlefield or thereabout. We don't exactly know the true figure actually now, but anyway. But that's the only evidence to say the Battle of Islandawana took place there. And after that, the Zulu stripped lots of the bodies of weaponry and all the rest of it, and then the British Army went in there, and anything else was collected up and taken away. Right. So if anyone metal detects at Islandawana today or tries to do archaeological work at Islandawana, that it's going to be very pushed to find any archaeological evidence of a battle that took place in 1879, right? Which, to be honest with you, is 150 years ago, right? So if we're struggling to find evidence of the Battle of Isandla other than these burial cromlechs scattered across the battlefield of Isandlwana, right, what chance have we got of finding military evidence on events occurring and pertaining to Julius Caesar in 55 and 54 BC? So, so this bay, the geomorphology, the bay was much larger, back to Pegwell Bay. And key insight, the Roman invasions leave light archaeological footprints when they're short term, right? Because then the question is, what you've got to ask the thing, what was, and we'll talk about the other two locations in a moment. What were the Romans trying to achieve? So if they were trying to achieve permanence, why didn't they build something like made of stone? Why didn't they build? They build the Richborough Arch to say that Claudius invaded in AD 43, but that was years later. But so what were the Romans trying to do, or what was Julius Caesar trying to do? More likely. So Julius Caesar was the one who wanted to leave a sign of his invasion, but and his sign of the invasion was actually the historical work that he put together. Maybe this is me being cynical. Julius Caesar invaded Britain because he wanted to write a book. Which sounds a bit crass, but maybe that's what he was doing. He invaded Britain because it was part of a book he was writing. Nice. So so what we've then got is that we'll go back to this now in a moment. It's rather interesting. This is actually the beach at a place known as Deal, right? So and you're thinking, well, okay, this warmer coastline, this would be perfect, a Deal, right? And you're thinking, well, okay, right, you could beach the boats there, and you could repair them as it's talking about in his work, right? But some historians used to think that this original invasion, which we were actually shown images of in school, right? My history teacher told me that it was actually one of the purported locations, right, was actually the White Cliffs of Dover. And we're just thinking, well, hang on a minute, well, this is just not plausible, right? And you're thinking, right, okay, hang on a minute, go away. I agree. So what have I signed up to a holiday? There we go. I nearly signed up to a holiday there. Basically, they're saying that the Romans actually initially landed here on the White Cliffs, right? And you're thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. And then when you look at the commentaries of Julius Caesar, he basically said, "Oh, we saw the White Cliffs. There were people in chariots on the top of the White Cliffs, and we didn't go there, so we actually decided to land somewhere else." So those are basically the three localities that we're talking about in regards to this whole history, in regards to Julius Caesar. Now, when you think about the invasion of Britain, right? That little spit out there was basically an island, right? Except, obviously it was landlocked then, but you could think of that as being a little bit of an island, right? And you can see Pegwell Bay there. That's Pegwell Bay. Just sort of, I can't get my note thing on you, but that's Pegwell Bay. That sort of little thing there. So you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. Okay, so the Romans, if they go a bit further north, they've got like topographical thing that they'd have to go. So the best thing to sort of go sort of northwest, right, and follow the coast. And this is probably more in the descriptions of Julius Caesar. That they did go inland. They sort of went north and then west rather than going northeast, right? And then they sort of marched a little bit further, and then again more of that history again. But this is a topographical map, and although that we want to think that Kent is quite flat, it's not. Right, there's lots of humps and bumps there, right? There's lots of flood plains, there's lots of river systems, there's lots of stuff going on, right? And this is the topographical landscape that Julius Caesar's having to navigate. And to be honest with you, Julius Caesar doesn't tell us much of this. He doesn't tell us of all the hills and all the humps and bumps because he just stayed near the coast. So he didn't really go inland. He didn't really sort of attack inland and conquer the landscape in the way that if he had conquered this whole area, right, he would have been writing about these hills and landscapes and changes, and he didn't do that. So now it's 8 o'clock, so we'll go on for a little bit longer, right, and then we'll take a break. I don't know who's just left us, but somebody else. But so one of the things after the events of 54 and after the events of 54 BC, right, is that what we're starting to see a lot more Roman coins, except these Roman coins in this image are actually Roman coins from a much later horde, from the Frome horde, right, from the latter part of the 200s. But I'm using this as a sort of an analogy, right? So obviously the coins that the hordes and lots of coins that are now being found after 54 BC, right? Associated with Julius Caesar, associated with the Roman Republic, associated with all that. What we start to see is that there's a lot more Roman archaeological evidence being found across the landscape in the sense of coins. Is this to do with trade, or is this associated with the sort of this invasion, this sort of expedition of Julius Caesar? And maybe they should be actually called an expedition because it's a bit of a jolly. And again, we're not having to talk about large numbers of Roman casualties either, right? And even if there were Roman casualties, they would have been cremated. They wouldn't have been buried, except cremated remains does leave evidence in the archaeological record. We haven't found that. And that would be radiocarbon dated as well. There can't be many casualties through any fighting. So therefore, the any fighting that Julius Caesar talks about probably wasn't as intense. But again, that's for discussion for another day. So who's just come out and who's just come on? Richard, can you add them back in? Are you there, Richard? I think it was Richard who left us. Hang on a minute.
No, Richard's there.
Oh, right. Oh, it's Goff.
No, yeah, back on now.
Oh, Goff is actually back on. So the one thing that we do know about is this is a shield that is actually found in the River Thames. Alongside what we've got is the Battersea Shield, right? So this is the Wandsworth Shield, and this is the like artistic designs of artifacts that we associate with this period that we're talking about now, right? But this is a bronze This is a bronze sort of part of a shield, right? And none of these types of things would have gone into any battle. But again, this gives you a bit of a stylistic sense of art that the local people would have had, right? And as much as we want to think that there was fighting, and this was initially believed because it was found in the River Thames. This was initially believed the Battersea Shield as a shield that was used in fighting with Julius Caesar, right? There's no signs of damage on the shield. And this again found in the River Thames. There was no damage on the shield, and it's probably 100 years earlier than 54 BC. So this is the Battersea Shield. Again, what people have done over the years, they've taken objects like this, right? The Wandsworth Shield, which isn't a complete shield, and they've taken this, for example, right? And some people believe that the Wandsworth Shield is actually, part of this, but another version. People have taken bits of evidence like this and basically said, right, this is to do with Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain, right? It was such a big affair, right? So anything they found in the River Thames is to do with Julius Caesar. Back in the early part of the 1900s, they actually found the remains of elephants in the River Thames. And they said these are some of Julius Caesar's fighting elephants, but there was no evidence that Julius Caesar had any elephants anyway, right? But because they found bones of old-looking elephants, it was obviously to do with Julius Caesar. Turned out that these were actually mammoth skulls and mammoth bones, and they wouldn't have been around the time of Julius Caesar anyway. So one thing that we're going to actually have a little look at, right, is this sort of figure, right? So I know it's a little Wargamers figure, but it's quite nice. So what we've got one single helmet that's actually been found that might be from this period, right? One single helmet. Again, we'll look at that again. And other than that, nothing else. When you're looking at a Roman soldier at this time, you don't have the plate armor, you don't have the chainmail, right? So you're not really going to find that in the archaeology. This is a Roman marine, the type of troops that would have been with Julius Caesar. And basically, you can see a kind of chest plate there, like a brass.
I haven't got any pictures, Carl.
What?
I haven't got any pictures.
Have you got pictures, Roger, Richard?
Yeah, I have.
And I have, Carl.
Yeah.
Right. It might be because you went back out and you come back in and
I didn't go out. So I was just cut off.
Oh, right. Right. Well, okay. What we'll do after the break, Goff, when we're all back with it. Oh, actually, what I'll do. Well, I've got an idea. I've got a cunning plan. Looking forward to the next series of Blackadder coming out. Hang on. If I go back there, there, right. And if we go back in, right, then we can share. Sharing is caring, isn't it, Goff? Particularly when Goff goes to Madeira and gets me some cake. Right, okay. Right, so are you seeing this figure now?
No.
What about you, Roger?
Well,
You're not seeing anything?
no, except the gallery.
Hang on a minute.
Like
Hang on.
just you.
All right, just look, just calm down, guys. Calm down. Right. Right, here we go. Total pandemonium. Right, okay, here we go. So there we go. And there, can you see him now?
Yeah. Yes.
But right, good. You see, I know the technology. This is Douglas, the Roman Marine, right? He's actually related to Bigus Dickus. But anyway, the point is, when you're looking at a figure like this, you're thinking, right, okay, it's a Wargamers figure. But when you think about the archaeology, you've got these boots, right? And basically, you look at think, right, the footwear's leather. May have been hobnails, but this is quite an early. This is a Roman Marine from the period of the 50s BC. You've got like a chest plate there, which is held in with leather straps, which would probably may have actually been sort of a light coating of bronze, and then you've got the shield with an iron metal boss, right? You've got the helmet, right? and you might have some belt buckles, and then you might have this really interesting spear in front, right? And this itself would leave a little bit in the archaeological record. But if you looking for any of this stuff in the archaeology, very little of this is going to be left behind by the Romans anyway, right? And so therefore, looking for the archaeological evidence is fraught. And any helmets, my God, if a Roman helmet was left around by a Roman, right, after he's had a pee and he just left it in the bushes, right? It's like the Romans didn't carry 2 or 3 helmets with them as a replacement. They had one helmet. It was very, very special to them, right? It's unlikely they would have lost anything like this. So again, we're restricted by the archaeological evidence. The pilum. I was trying to think for the spear then. So again, looking for the archaeology is fraught. That helmet is very interesting, which we'll look at again. But on that note, it's now 8:09. We're going to take a break. So that would then leave us with a 10-minute break, right? And then you've got 40 minutes left, guys, right? But mind you, Bill might be asking loads of questions. So we'll just see how it goes. And you, Rod, shut up. Right, okay. Right, we're going to go on to that and stop sharing. Right, Rog, give it to us.
No, that was fine. The only one point you covered it partly was that evidence of the invasion in 43 BC. Wondering what the evidence might be or could be. You've got graves, right? Equipment. Well, metal might be left because a lot of the wood and the leather would have long gone, presumably, depending on the soil and how wet it was. But you're wondering what you might expect to see that would pin down not just later troops leaving stuff, but the earlier ones. How can you identify it exactly then without some sort of dating of, I don't know, skeletons, maybe?
I think the point is that we're looking at here is threefold, right? That the first thing that we're looking at Julius Caesar and we're thinking, right, we're looking at the after effect of the events. So after 54 BC rather than the archaeology. Lots of people suddenly get ideas of being Roman, and they start to bury people with Roman trade goods, and they want Roman trade goods. Why has that suddenly happened, right? And if we for example look at the Second World War, and suddenly the Americans come over here, and for my own relatives, my auntie had never seen, she had a little baby in a pram, she'd never seen a banana before, and they bit through the skin. She never had bananas again. The Americans brought them over with them, and the Americans brought nylons with them. The Americans brought Coca-Cola with them. They brought chocolate that we hadn't had before, right? Suddenly we've got all of this stuff that the Americans have brought over. The Romans never, the Americans never invaded Britain, naturally, but the point is their culture invaded Britain, right? That's the type of thing that we're talking about with Julius Caesar. We're talking about after Julius Caesar. What are the signs that something happened? Now, and then the other point as well is we've got AD 43. Now, we're only starting to see that AD 43 happened because we're starting to see that London is developed into a town for the first time properly after 44, 45 AD. So there must have been something to have happened that indicated that the Romans are now starting to build a town stroke city in Londinium, right? As for evidence for AD 43, it's still very, very sketchy, right? But evidence for the invasions of Scotland, it's all on the ground. Evidence of invading Cymru, Wales, it's all on the ground. Evidence, it's everywhere, right? And we're thinking, well, is it because the evidence that was being left behind in Julius Caesar's time and Claudius's time was quite rapid? They didn't need to build defended sites because the people didn't offer much resistance. But as they started to get deeper into Britain, they did. And we're looking at the end of the Norburn site, which is in northeast Wales, if we get there. Right. Anyway, if there's nothing else, Roger, I'm going to quickly ask Dick, anything?
Maybe a bit I've got is where they thought that it was only a small island the size of the Isle of Wight. But surely over the years preceding, we've got plenty of sort of sites along the south coast, sort of Iron Age sites where Mediterranean people have, there's stuff from the Mediterranean, finds and everything. So they must have known it wasn't just one little blob of land,
I actually I was picked up on that last night as well. I got to be honest with you, and I think the point I'm trying to make is that you're thinking about Pythias's journey around Britain hundreds of years before, and we're thinking about him circumnavigating Britain, but what the point I'm trying to make, the point I'm actually trying to make, is that people in Rome, if they hadn't known any of this, they would have no idea of the size of Britain, right? I'm not denying anything you've said, Richard. You are completely right. We've done that. We've looked at that. But I'm thinking about the mentality of people in Rome. They would have no idea the size of Britain, and maybe Julius Caesar didn't have the size of Britain because he was a landlover. He wasn't a naval man. He had no idea what Pythias said about the size of Britain. So the point is. You are dead right, Richard, to pick me up on that. But I think the point is, I'm looking at this from the point of view of somebody in Rome. They may have thought there's a few hundred people living in Britain, and therefore, Julius Caesar conquered it. That's it. So that's the point I'm trying to make, Richard.
You go.
Billis?
Right, I'm putting myself now in Julius Caesar's boots, okay?
Oh, please do. I'm going to sit back and listen.
I'm to boost my status, I would have made the Senate and everyone in Rome know what I was doing. I was going to invade Britannia and grab some glory for myself and whatever's there.
As you would, Bill. As
you would, obviously. And he had his army in place, his boats in place. What he may not have had, would have sought, was intelligence. So knowing that there had been a lot of trade between Rome and the Mediterranean basin hundreds of years before, I'm sure he would have had some sort of planning meeting and get as much intelligence as he can to actually maximize the time he was there. And I'd go further and say that the fact that there's no archaeological evidence could mean that there was never any battles at all. They just went as far as London, said hello to the locals, introduced them to some of the Roman ways, etc., and left. Maybe the odd skirmish or two, but nothing serious. And how long was he there? We don't know.
He was there for no more than 2 months. So it's not a lot to happen in 2 months. There's
a reconnoiter. That's all it was.
Exactly.
I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with most of that. But there's one thing. There's one thing that links in Richard and you. But before we go with that, Julius Caesar talks about the Battle of the River Medway, and we're talking about then the River Thames, and it's like
I missed that one because there was a battle then.
No, hang on a minute. He talks about this, but they're associated with river crossings, right? And therefore they're not land battles, and therefore they're going to be very small skirmishes, right? There's not going to be a lot of people involved in fighting over water. There's no actual land battles. You're dead right, Bill. There are no land battles. These are like fighting over water, right? It's like a King Canute thing. So there's that, but we'll have a look at a bit more detail on a future occasion, right?
Okay.
But this thing about intelligence, this thing links in with Richard and you, right? Julius Caesar's intelligence was so bad that he was gonna he was unsure where to land in Britain. Right? I can remember I went to some kind of conference and they discussed this in the conference. They were saying, well, if Julius Caesar, as Richard and Bill said, is dead right. The Romans had been aware of Britain for a long time. There was this trade. We know all that. But the speaker in this conference was saying, with all of that known, why did Julius Caesar, writing his own accounts, that he was going to land somewhere? It was inappropriate. It was not appropriate. The intelligence I've got is so bad, right? And they decided to land somewhere else. right? And apparently, in one of the two invasions, he writes about the fact, oh, we see these people on the white cliffs of Dover in their chariots, and they follow us up the coastline. We were going to land there, but we then discovered there was nowhere to land. So it's just, and the speaker said, well, if Julius Caesar had all this intelligence, right, because he was a very intelligent man, why did he have no idea where to land?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
So Bill and Richard, you are very right in everything that you're saying, but it doesn't link up with what Julius Caesar is talking about. He doesn't know where he's going to land. He's basically got this fleet and it sails up the coast to try and find somewhere. It's like, well, hang on, there's all this information, but it's like Goff knows, right? You're not going to go out on a boat, right? Being a maritime man, you're not going to go off on a boat and think, oh, we'll just go somewhere over there. We'll eventually find a harbour and we'll berth our boat, right? You don't do that. You're going to go with intelligence.
Is that what he said? Is that what he said, Carl? Because I would imagine he would have sent out some boats to reconnoitre the best landing
No,
place.
he didn't do it. He didn't do it. No.
Well. What a plonker.
Hang on a minute, you're supposed to be seeing this man as this amazing person. Well, we're gonna do the commentaries Gillico again, but obviously not tonight. Goff, anything you want to say?
No, nothing to add to everyone. That's pretty good. Thanks.
So what we're gonna do? My God, it's 8:19. I want a quick coffee, so we'll be back no later than 30 for 30 minutes. Oh my God, it's a race.
Exactement. Right.
Oh, shut up, Rog.
My cappuccino.
Shut up, you tart.
Oh.
I'm sure somebody belched then.
Oh.
Oh, matron. La 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. Oh my God, the Iron Age in the Independent today. Oh my God, what's he got here? I could put the kettle on. Oh, that's right. Find near complete Iron Age battle trumpet. Yeah, we've got to do the battle trumpet next week. And Goff's contribution. I got a pizza to eat after this.
Luna.
Allongez la route long le plan square. Bellongez la route long le plan square. It's good doing a bit of love music, isn't it, Roger?
Oh.
Oh.
Let's have a look and see if I got any here.
Bill, do you ever? I was in Barry the other day, right, and there was a couple of used condoms in the street. Is it the type of thing you see in my steg?
You weren't in my stag recently?
No, it was Barry. Barry.
Oh, Barry. Well, you'd expect that sort of thing down there, wouldn't you? Were any burnt out cars on the streets, Carl?
Yeah, it was actually.
Any riots lately?
No, no.
No, it's a beautiful place. It really is. Barbados, yeah. There we are. Barry by the sea.
Roger's thinking about buying a house there.
Oh, well done, Rod. Oh. Where are you now, Carl? Are you in your Iron Age house, or you're in Barry or whatever?
Yeah, I'm in here, and then I gotta travel back. The roads are open now. I managed to grit. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow's going to be pretty bad, isn't it? From mid-afternoon onwards.
Yeah, I'm told there's going to be a storm tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, there we are. Oh, dear. What else has happened? I don't know. Yeah. Nothing.
Oh my God. Do you know, I'm sure my phone is listening to what I'm saying. It's come up on my phone. Condoms won't protect you from spiritually transmitted diseases.
Spiritually transmitted?
Yeah.
No, I'm struggling on that one.
Well, they're spiritual, aren't they?
Are they?
No. Condoms are not going to protect you from spiritually transmitted diseases.
No.
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
No. Yeah. Who said that in the first place?
It's just come up on my phone.
Oh, you get some stuff on your phone, didn't you? And me as well.
Yeah, no, it just came up as I was talking about it.
Some rubbish, yeah. Oh, well. Why people put these stupid things on the IT, on their phones? Why do they do it?
Yeah, exactly.
Must be weird people around, they really are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, hang on a minute. My kettle hasn't boiled.
Well, you've got to plug it in, Carl, if it's going to boil. Come on now.
No, it's a bloody gas kettle, isn't it?
Oh, gas, yeah.
You know, you've got to heat the propane and butane up to get it going.
Hang on. You got a bottle supply there, yeah?
Yeah.
Well.
So butane doesn't burn very well when it's cold.
No, propane has got a higher calorific value.
Yeah, that's correct.
As I know to my cost.
I won't go there, Bill.
No, one of my projects in BB Chemicals was to put a smelly substance in propane and butane, the LPGs, to detect any liquid. And what this substance was is something called ethyl mercaptan, the second smelliest substance known to man. And during commissioning the system, there were leakages, and it was a cloying smell which just clung to your clothes and your hair, you know.
Really?
Horrible. Oh yeah. So butane and propane are odorless, and that's the reason that they dosed. So if there's a leak, you know about it. So you're actually smelling not the LPGs, but the dosing agent, the ethyl mercaptan. It's so smelly. It's about 1 part per million. You know, it's so smelly and so strong and concentrated. I thought I'd throw that in anyway.
Yeah, but me and Richard have got a better story. There's a guy in Barry, right, back in the early 1900s, right? He was looking for a gas leak in his house, right? So he went in there with a candle, and the result. Richard, can you tell any more about that story?
I don't know, it was badly burnt, I think.
Yeah.
And it's from Barry, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's typical, isn't it?
Yeah, that'll be it. Yeah.
I can't believe that. Well, that's
No,
wonderful.
it's true. Hang on, Richard, haven't we got more than one case of that happening?
No,
There's another story, Carl.
Oh, wonderful.
Alan's in work for British Gas, and he used to say about the old guys what they used to do.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one place that there's a lot of gas coming out, and he set it under the floor, throw his a match under there to clear the floor. It didn't blow the house up because it hadn't infiltrated enough.
Oh, wonderful.
But that was the old day. Who would do that now? God.
Bloody hell.
Because the thing is, if you got 5 to 10% of gas, methane, something, in an atmosphere, that's enough for a big bang.
Oh, right. Is it?
Yeah. That creates an explosion. A heck of a lot of gas will just burn it to death, boom, in a minute. Any of the methane, propane, anything. Deadly. So be careful.
Indeed.
Roger, I'll take your advice, Rog.
Well, there we are.
You can't always be as intelligent as you.
Correct.
Oh, by the way, I've got 1 minute to go, so I'm gonna grab a biscuit.
Come on, that time you know.
Hang on a minute. I'm the one in charge here, not you.
You said 8:30 on the dot. Boing.
I'm the Ruben Führer here, not you.
Oh boy. Oberleutnant.
Yeah. Right, let's go for it.
Go for it, Charlie.
I'm back. We're back on. It's 8:30. We got the long haul left.
Oh.
My since I moaned that the kettle hadn't boiled, my bloody coffee's too hot now.
Oh.
Right. Okay, let's get on with it.
Well, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Jawohl. I've been watching our series, Man in the High Castle. I think it's great.
Who?
Have you seen that, Rog?
No. November.
It's great. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Hang on. Hang on. What's going on here? Right there. Good. Okay, we've done that. Right. Okay, I've got to get into the feel of it. I was into a feel earlier on, but we had to have a break. Right, so here we go. Right, now, we were talking about sort of this material evidence and sort of evidence left behind, and the one thing that is really, really clear is that Julius Caesar did write something really interesting, right? He didn't write about sieging hill forts, right? Now, this is the point, and this ties in with Bill's point, is we don't actually have any evidence of pitched battles, one, but we don't have him talking about hill forts. Now, because he's not talking about hill forts, tells us something really sensible, that if he's making it up, right, he would talk about besieging hill forts. He would talk about, he's captured these hill forts and killed loads of people. But he doesn't talk about hill forts per se. And the reason why he doesn't talk about hill forts is because in the archaeology now, we know that most of the hill forts in southern England were abandoned by this stage by 55 BC. And that's a really, really important point. In absence of evidence, there's evidence in his absence of not writing about hill forts that they weren't a threat to him. And that's a really interesting piece of forensic archaeology, right? You know, you've all watched Hercule Poirot, and you know, you've looked at that sort of, so this is what we're talking about. Now, the other thing that's happening is that I didn't get any images up here, which was a bit of a shame. But when we're talking about, for example, coins, I know these coin evidence from later on, but there is a massive explosion of Gallo-Belgic coins in southeastern Britain, and what this indicates is that these Marines and then the Romans leaving, right, is that there's a suddenly Julius Caesar's gone back and said, well, you know, we can trade with those people. You know, they're not much of a threat. And there's lots more goods here. Now, there's another point with all of this, right? That and it's very difficult to see, but we've already looked at it. Now, quite some months ago, probably about a year ago, we looked at Vercingetorix, right? And we talked about Elysee. We talked about Julius Caesar. And we talked about Vercingetorix at Elysee, apparently north of Paris in 52 BC. And Julius Caesar's besieging these thousands and thousands of warriors that are fighting alongside Vercingetorix, right? Vercingetorix, the siege is eventually lifted. Vercingetorix is captured, dragged through the streets of Rome in chains, blah, 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 right? Now, in that story, it talks about, again, in Julius Caesar's words, it talks about Britons coming over to aid the Gauls in France. And I'm thinking about, why would they do that? Because only a couple of years earlier, the Julius Caesar's invaded Britain, right? He's seen off the Britons are seen off him, you know, tribute and, you know, slaves and all the rest of it, you know, whatever way you want to look at it, right? If Britons felt themselves so safe, why did they help the Gauls in the first place? And what's very obvious about this forensic fact is that it's very likely that Britain was a place of sanctuary. Again, we mentioned this at the beginning. Britain is a place of sanctuary. And basically, Julius Caesar wasn't fighting against Britons per se. He was fighting against these people that had come back over from Britain to help their brethren in the guise of the Gauls. That's probably more like the story, right? Because why would the Britons bother? The Romans are no threat to them, so why would they come over and help the Gauls? So, and again, these events going on in France are seemingly hundreds and hundreds of miles away from lots of people in Britain. So it's likely that that supposed army coming from Britain to help Vercingetorix in 52 BC was full of Gauls that had returned armed by the Britons back into Europe. And that's a really interesting thing. So it's all to do with political alliances. It's all to look at that in essence of understanding the times. And then the other thing as well is the Britons didn't really bother Rome ever again until AD 43. Let's just put it quite simple, right? When in history do Britons invade Europe? When in history do we see waves of Britons coming over to Europe? It really doesn't happen unless we are we are somehow involved with some wars going on in Europe. And you can basically mention Vercingetorix. You could talk about the First World War. You could talk about the Second World War. And when you look at the Second World War, Britain's a sanctuary for the Polish. Britain's a sanctuary for Vichy France, right? Not Vichy France, non-Vichy French, you know, Free French. So, and then those armies gathered together and they come back over to Europe and help in the war against the Germans in 1944. So you can see these things spinning out in the past as they spin out in the future. Anyway, moving on. So it's very likely that now what we're seeing there's something in my notes that is flagging. It's in front of me, right? And it's saying the words, archaeologists and historians seem to ignore the fact that there were people in Britain. Richard mentioned it earlier on. Bill mentioned it earlier on. There are people in Britain who are already economically Romanized. Is that just to do with trade, or has something else happened before the time of Julius Caesar? And the one thing about Julius Caesar, if anyone else had invaded Britain, Julius Caesar would have had access to the records, to expunge any evidence that anyone else from the Roman world had ever invaded in Europe. Anyway, that's an idea from me. I'm not going to read about that anywhere else. I just thought that I'd put that in there. So the one thing that that we do find, going back to the archaeological evidence, and when we're looking at this, and we're thinking, right, why aren't there any evidence? Why is there no evidence of chariots being found in this part of the southern England? It may be because Julius Caesar made that bit up. But thinking about spearheads, shield bosses, and pilum fragments, i.e., that's pilum there. We've got to think that there are little things that we could look at a future occasion, but we're not going to do that today. So evidence suggests contact, limited conflict, but not on a large scale. This was not a large-scale conquest. Julius Caesar can call it a large-scale conquest, but it certainly wasn't that. So thinking about what's going on. So we've mentioned about earthworks, we've mentioned camps, problem of absence, Roman military archaeology. Romans usually leave marching camps, maybe roads, but we don't find any. And again, it's probably because the Romans were not engaged in much in the way of fighting. When I'm talking about marching camps, I'm usually talking about the fact that there's two reasons why marching camps are constructed. One reason is that the Romans are under no threat from the local people, so they build loads of them. So on Neath Common and in Llandrindod, Wells Common, right, there are dozens of these things, and they build them because they're practicing how to build marching camps. But when you see the odd marching camp in the middle of nowhere, it's an indication that the Romans have built that marching camp because they perceive some threat. In both cases, we don't find any in Kent for this period, which again is really strange. So no confirmation of Caesar-era marching camps in Britain. Again, it's a short campaign. It's in the period of weeks. It might be that we're talking about weeks rather than 2 months. We're talking about him coming over, having something to write in a book, and then he comes over for the next invasion in 54 BC. The temporary camps themselves would not have had ditches. They would not have had banks. They would have just been dismantled and moved the next night. And when you're thinking about it, how many miles are there from Pegwell Bay to the River Thames? You're not talking about many nights' march. Remember, the Romans marched up to 30 miles a day. So it might be that they got to the River Thames and that was the end of that. The other thing that we're talking about is if the Romans are marching along the coastline, lots of the evidence to do with their activity has got long since eroded away. Some writers say that the reason why we don't find evidence of from the period of Julius Caesar is that they've been overwritten by later evidence. But if the evidence was quite scant and limited, that would not be the case. In many ways, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but it limits certainty. But there's another image that I want to show you, right? So, sort of a native site, right? This is the reconstruction is completely wrong because one, there would be lots more mud there and trees in the distance and that guy wandering back and forth, there would be mud, but it looks fairly good. But this next image ties in with absence of evidence. Is not evidence of absence, but it limits certainty. But one thing that we do have is that suddenly, before particularly in some of these areas that we're talking about in regards to Julius Caesar, from Pegwell Bay to River Medway to the River Thames, right? Suddenly, lots of burials, nothing to do with fighting or whatever. Obviously, we've got a period of under 100 years between 54 BC and AD 43. We actually start to see that people are being buried with lots more Roman artifacts, right? Why are they being buried with Roman amphora, right? Why are they being now buried with Roman Samian ware? What is exactly going on? So this type of burial is going to be pre 54 BC, and after 54 BC, we start to find pits like this with lots more Roman artifacts in them, indicating that this Roman expedition has much more effect than the archaeology that we don't find from 55 or 54 BC, but it's after. So the British response, now, what we can say is that if we look to a map, which we're going to come across now, we're going to go back. We had a map earlier on, and where's my map? Hang on, off. Maps. We had a map of the territory. Right, there. Come on, there, the map. Right, okay, this is really interesting. This takes us. So you've got the people of the Catavilani. You can clearly see the River Thames, right? So, in other words, Julius Caesar is said to have marched all the way from Pegwell Bay, just above the eye, all the way to the closest point in the River Thames, and that's it. That's as far as he got, according to his own records. Now, one interesting thing is, if we want to talk about historical figures, are the Catavilani people. We know that the Catavilani people existed in name, because on their coins there's the word CATV or CATU on coins produced by the Catavilani people. The Trinovantes, we see Trini on them. The Cantiaci, we see Canti on them, right? So we know these people, these tribal people by names existed. But when we talk about the Catavilani, Julius Caesar mentions a leader known as Cassivellaunus. But Cassivellaunus is not known from any historical writing. Cassivellaunus's name is, in fact, not known from a single coin that the Catavillani people wrote, produced, minted, right? Julius Caesar tells us about Catavillanus. Basically, there's a meeting between Cassivellaunus, the leader of the Catavillani, and slowly but surely, the people like the Catavillani start to get very pro-Roman after 54 BC. In other words, they see Rome and they say, oh, right, we'll have a bit of that. So there are changes going on in Britain after 54 BC, lots of mega changes. So burials, social change, elite people buried, leaders of tribes, leaders of communities. They're being buried with a lot more continental goods than had ever been found before. Britain is becoming known to Rome. Britain is becoming Romanized, right? I don't like using the word Romanized. I very rarely use it, but this is now, and I don't like using the term Roman Britain, Romano Britain. I hate that term. I never use it. But if you want to use it in context, this is becoming Romano British, and the Romans haven't invaded. This is a stealth invasion. This is a cultural invasion without a physical invasion. So before we go on to one last bit, which actually changes lots of things that we've actually mentioned, right? The one last bit is, did Julius Caesar really invade Britain? Right, that's the question. This isn't the end yet. Archaeological verdict. Yes, but briefly. A matter of weeks rather than a year, and less than 2 months. 2, limited military engagement. That's something the bill said. There's no evidence of any real battle other than Julius Caesar talking about it. Julius Caesar's not going to be much of a writer if he's not writing about battles. It'd be like, oh, this is boring. He didn't even fight anybody. So he just put a couple of battles in there, right? And this is what I've been talking about from when we started. The major psychological and political impact of the Romans. The people are now aware of the Romans. And this thing about being given tribute by the King of Orkney is absolute nonsense, because it's just not possible. and unless he was wandering down, unless he was here with his wife on a shopping trip in London, which didn't exist then. Why would he even be here? So there's weird things like that. There's discrepancies in Julius Caesar's writings. Again, we will be seeing more of this. So Julius Caesar's legacy, he opened Britain to Roman knowledge. In other words, people are now aware that Britain was available. It was available territory. Was this setting the scene for a later invasion? Maybe not. Did Julius Caesar actually think that this is going to be part of the Roman world? We don't know. So, in many ways, we've had a good look at this. We've been critical, and there is some archaeological evidence to look up over the next few weeks. However, there's something really, really odd that I need to show you, which changes the narrative. Right now, up approximately just on the because I haven't got my little cursor, just on the left hand side of the word N there in North Wales, right? There's a fort. There's an Iron Age fort known as Dinorban, right? And in the Barry studio, I've got a whole book on the excavations at Dinorban. Fascinating, right? So let's just go to, here we go, Dinorban, right? Now Dinorban is odd. And the reason why Dinorban is odd is because hill forts in this part of Britain were being refortified around this time. And it's odd because where we see the likes of Maiden Castle, internally is 50 acres, 50 football pitches, and it's abandoned, right? Hod Hill, Hambledon Hill in Dorset, these sites are just abandoned, right, at this time. But strangely enough, this site of Dinorban is actually refortified. Dinorban and the wider British response to Rome. So Dinorban Hill Fort, you could see a little bit of a fantasy story going on, but the people at Dinorban would have probably heard about, maybe a year or so later, these people in nice shiny armor with nice helmets and plumes, but there's something else going on in other parts of Britain, and we don't know why. Are they worried about something? They're not worried about a Roman invasion because it really didn't take place. So this is in the Clwydian range, and this is one of the largest and most heavily defended hill forts in Britain. You can actually see clear ditches. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of ditches there, right, with a big area in the middle, right? Why is this being refortified? What is going on with this site? Aerial view, not a brilliant aerial view, but what's going on here? And what they've done is archaeological excavations, and what they found is that against everything that I say in my presentations about hill forts, that they weren't used for people to live, right? There are 1 or 2 examples in Britain that buck the trend. And this is an example that these people had gone into panic mode and were starting to make this site the largest and most heavily defended hill fort in Cymru, Wales. Happens to be in this area. Why? Big why. It started in the Bronze Age, roughly around 3,000 years ago. They're really kicking into touch in 50 years BC. Massively refortified, my notes look at. So the hook to this is that Dinorban shows us what Britain looked like away from Caesar's landing beaches. Powerful, organized, and prepared. Now, this is the point. What's happened with teaching archaeology and history in regards to the Roman period and in regards to Julius Caesar is as follows. Archaeologists used to say that Britain was like this, right? It was like this all over at the time of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar doesn't mention these things in Kent, right? He just doesn't mention them, right? Because they're not used anymore. They're not relevant to him. But Julius Caesar doesn't get here. It's hundreds of miles away from Kent. He doesn't get here. He doesn't know about this, right? So what is going on? So there's another story. This bucks the trend, and what we've got is this is the inner defenses. We've got the way this is organized. You've got this rampart made of stone and rubble and stone, and it raises up, and you've got this sort of this wooden sort of rampart above, and you've got this ditch outside, right? So this is one of the 4 sort of sets of banks and ditches around Dinorban, and this would be great to actually look at again. So why Dinorban matters to Julius Caesar. So the archaeological phases, the major rampart construction, this is enhanced at exactly this time. So it's a bit odd, but it might be to do with something else, and that might tie us in directly to Julius Caesar. It might be a reason why Julius Caesar came over here was that he was asked to come over to Britain because there was strife. The local tribal people in southern England were not using their hill forts and stuff, but they were in the north. Maybe there was some kind of threat that we don't really know about. But we're seeing something very interesting. This isn't happening where Julius Caesar is, but it's happening here in this part of Cymru Wales and other sites. For example, Stanwick, which is in Yorkshire way, that sort of huge site, hundreds of acres of banks and ditches around it, excavated by Sir Morton Wheeler in the 1950s. So the multivalent defences, they're timber-laced ramparts, the stone revetments, complex entrances, and we're looking at something like this, and we're thinking, well, this looks like really defensive, and there's buildings, people are actually living here. Now, usually when we look at sites like this, we say they couldn't have lived there, but where would they have stored the water? They're in desperate mode. They're thinking of something. So these places like Dinorban are directly contemporary with Caesar's Gallic campaigns, his British expedition in 55 and 54 BC. So one thing I need to say, and an impression that I mustn't give, is that this is directly to do with Julius Caesar. But what I need to say, the key point, Dinorban wasn't reacting to Julius Caesar. It was part of a Britain already preparing for continental style warfare. And what does that mean? But it is only happening here. So the threat to these people in Dinorban was probably from other people in Britain, right? So there was something going on that we're not understanding in the Julius Caesar narrative, right? So this is so when we're looking at this is a defensive landscape. It's a fortress, not a village, but we've got lots of evidence of people desperately wanting to live here and appoint a sanctuary. There must have been something that we don't really understand, because usually when I look at these sites, I say people never really lived here in big numbers, but lots of the post holes and stuff, this one site tells us something very, very different. So when sort of it's a bit not really happy with that reconstruction, but anyway, so what the archaeology shows: massive labor investment, controlled access points, designed to display power to who? Who are they? What are they trying to say? What's the message? What is the message of this? What is this saying? What is the archaeology saying? What is the story of this site? Really nice image there. What is the story? So massive labor investment, controlled access points, designed to display power, resist attack and intimidate rivals. So the rivals for these people are not the Romans, but it's weird coincidence that's happening at the same time. This aligns with Julius Caesar's description of Britain. And one of the things that we hear about Julius Caesar, which might tie in with why he's here, because he's been invited. Julius Caesar describes that this is a fragmented people. They're fragmented into different tribes. This tribe is certainly doing something different from the Juratrigi tribe in Dorset, which isn't using these things anymore. It's likely, again, that people in the south weren't as much at war as people in the north with each other. But when we start to develop to looking at AD 43, the Romans are invited over because there's internal warfare going on, right? This is something that Julius Caesar wrote about in his work in book 4 and 5. The one thing that could be said is that these people are militarily confident. So this is why Dinorban's being constructed. So in sort of in sort of coming to an end of this now, if we can sort of get to that sort of nice section, I like this. So, so Julius Caesar faced warrior societies. He had faced them in Gaul. He had faced them in Spain. Not primitive farmers. These are people who've got a sense of culture, material culture. What de Norban tells us about late Iron Age Britain. And when we look at Orkney as well, when we look at the northern tip of Scotland, we see these brocks. Richard mentioned it. Bill mentioned it. Even at de Norban, they're finding local pottery, but they're also finding pottery that's influenced by pottery from the continent. They're metalworking like any other Iron Age site anywhere in this part of the West. So it's also showing that these people are trying to progress their Iron Age. They're trying to move on with their Iron Age. And Bill knows as well, with going to Orkney with me. When you look at a Brock, for example, you know that Iron Age people were advancing their civilization. And I've not said it today at all, but I'm going to say it now at the end. If Rome had never invaded Britain, Britain would be an advanced culture anyway, with or without Rome. But for some reason, when Rome was influencing and trading, these people liked a bit of that. And even in places like de Norban, in northeast Cymru, Wales, what's missing for a place like this? There's no Roman military equipment and there's no destruction layer from a Roman assault. This site, when the Romans had taken over Britain, was never assaulted by the Romans. And out of the 5,000 Iron Age hill forts that we find across Britain, only 1% show any sign that they've ever been attacked, and probably 0 to 1 or 2 examples out of the 5,000 were ever attacked by the Romans, which is basically maybe none. So Julius Caesar never reached Wales, never even come close. But Wales was already living in a militarized Iron Age world. And when we think about de Norban, and we think that, okay, if we do a comparison between Northeast Wales, Kent is already with a continental trade with Rome, and they continue after 54 BC. Wales is within like a regional power-based struggle. Southeast England and throughout the south have got coinage. These people don't, but they've got prestigious goods that some of them may come from the continent. The people in the south have got short Roman contact. These have got no direct contact in northeast England with the Romans. And when we think about northern Wales, they're still hill fort dominated in the north, but not in the south of Wales. In the south, they're starting to develop tribes, and they're starting to develop places like Cyflifar Atrabatum and Geropolis, which is in Dorset, which is one of those newer sites that have been found. Britain was not one society. Julius Caesar encountered many British societies. And again, if we close now, psychological impacts of Caesar's expedition, even without Roman boots in Wales, news travels via trade routes, tribal diplomacy, hostages and tribute system, increased anxiety, power consolidation, status competition. Maybe these people at de Norban, found a couple of years later about the Julius Caesar thing, and I thought, oh God, we've got something else to worry about. Typical Welsh person, we've got something else to worry about. So we'll sort of rebuild these defences, but there may have been no impact at all. De Norban may represent a Britain watching Rome from a distance and preparing anyway. Were they? Weren't they? We don't know. So de Norban to Roman Wales. If you think about this in a wider scale, and you think about this all leading slowly forward, hopefully tonight we've given an idea of Julius Caesar. We're going to look at more information. We've given another part of Britain that is completely different from what Julius Caesar was coming across. And hopefully we'll have more questions to answer on a future presentation. So thanks for joining me looking at Julius Caesar tonight. And what we're going to do, we're going to end that now. 1 minute over, folks. Hopefully you're all still there.
Yeah,
and
thanks, Val.
we are still there. So we're going to start off with Roger. Anything you want to say?
No, that's fine. Lots to think about.
And you do look a bit like Gorbachev.
Yeah, it's a special thing on my head, you know.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
know.
That's
Anything, Das
Hawaii.
Badania. Anything else you want to say, Rog?
No, that's fine. Look forward to next week, Tuesday, with luck.
Good. So we won't see you again on Wednesday for a while. Fair enough.
I'll give the boys a rest.
Yeah, I think we need it, to be honest.
Okay, I'll be off now.
Night night, Rog, babe.
Take
Night
care.
night.
Uh,
Thanks for
Ta-ra,
joining
Rog.
us, Rog, and a happy New Year. Take care, Rog. Right, who else have we got? Bill wants to go next. So, Bill, anything you want to say, babe?
Yeah,
Hang on, what happened to Goff?
Goff, where are you? Goff, come back.
Oh, he's gone. I think you said something. Right, Bill, anything you want to say?
Yeah. I think it says something about Caesar's personality that he didn't ask a scribe, an historian, to actually write the account himself. Presumably, he wants to glorify his own actions and exaggerate them, etc.
Yeah, actually, if we think about that just a second, that is correct. Julius Caesar wrote the story. Claudius didn't write about his invasion, right? So that's a really interesting point. So Julius Caesar did actually write his own story, and
there's a lot of questions there, isn't it? I mean, why, what happened, etc. Just as a matter of interest, is this account in the public domain at all? I would love to read it if it's readable.
We are actually going to be doing that another night. So don't worry about it. Yeah, it is available. And what you've got to do, you need, right. The thing is with this thing through eBay, right? You need to tell me I've got basically a month, and if it doesn't turn up in a week, right? It's coming from a book publisher selling on eBay, and I will I need to chase them up. So if you don't get it by Friday, you need to let me know.
Okay, then. But coming back to Julius Caesar's account, is that available in the public domain or not? I'd love to read it.
Yeah, it is available.
How big the document is, how big the book it is.
It is available in the public domain. So we will. When we look at it, right? When we look at it, we will. I will let you know some more details about how to get hold of it.
Yeah, I can imagine all of us reading that individually and coming up to different ideas about certain aspects here, then everywhere. It's inevitable, isn't it? It could be a fascinating read. Okay, thanks, Carl. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, you may as well stay on for Richard because we're going to be Billy No Mates. Anything you want to say, Rich?
Oh, very interesting.
Good. Well, I gotta have a quick lie down, and I've got to have my pizza, and I'm gonna get on more with the Barry book. So that's it. So
a long lie down now. Thank you, Carl.
Anyway, if nobody else wants to say anything else, I'm going to say good night to Richard. I'm going to say night to Bill. I don't know what happened to Goff, but I will see you next Tuesday and Wednesday. Night, night, guys.
Hey, thanks, thanks, everyone.
Oh, Carl.
Yeah, go on quickly, Rich.
I'm just going to say, when you've been going through a few bits on the book and things, a few little bits need altering. A couple of mistakes.
If they need to be altered, you need to indicate them in the text.
All right.
And you need to indicate them in red.
Rightio.
Because if you don't indicate them in red, I'm not going to know what's going on.
Rightio.
All right?
Yeah.
No, actually, like you've been doing.
Yeah.
Well, because as I'm going through it, I'll see it again. So just do it.
Okay, then.
All right.
Rightio.
All right, then. As I say, I'm going to have another stint. Another stint. After I have something to eat, then I'm going to have another stint.
Okay. See you next week.
It's driving Michelle. It's driving Michelle mad. Have you actually seen the images in the book? The line stuff.
I've been through some of it. I only had it on my phone. I got a problem with my computer, so I couldn't.
Okay.
Well, down on the phone, I only get the middle of it.
Oh shit!
But there's photos on it because that's one of the ones I was going to pick up on.
All right then. All right then. Well, make sure you do what you can.
Yeah. Okay then. I'll be in touch before.
I'll probably be in touch with you.
Anyway.
If I see any corkers, I might contact you at 12 o'clock at night tonight. Oh, I can imagine what bloody Pauline says. Oh, not him again! For fuck's sake, Richard, tell him to fuck off.
Something like that. Yeah.
Hey, I love that thing about Gary Tiley. We're going to go off on a bloody island. I'm not. We're not taking Gary Tiley with us. Fuck that.
He told me he was telling me a story the other day, Mike,
Oh no, I don't
Yeah.
want to know.
with oh,
Do you,
what was the guy's the name?
do you want me to go through the list? There was Gerald Davis, Howard Thomas, Maurian Williams.
Morian.
Oh yeah, go on, tell me.
Well, he did Gary Tyler did a talk at the Teachers Training College years ago. It must have been a
God,
while ago because it's been closed a while. And Morian wanted to do it with him, so they both started presenting this thing. And then sort of Morian had like a sort of a brainstorm and went off completely off key and everything on what they were discussing.
So it didn't go down well by the sounds of it.
He had a bit of a brainstorm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we've yeah. You just when you go to the end of the book and look in the biography. And if you see something, you'll laugh what I put in the biography. I want you to see it, right? So yeah, it's not going to go in the book, but I just want to see if you pick it up. All right.
As long as we don't upset everyone.
I think I put something in the other. I think I put something in. I was having one of those moments. I put that in. Nobody'll notice, and I think I can't remember what it was. I totally made something up. Oh God. Right. Anyway, yeah, I'm sure somebody will. And the point is, Richard. The point is, Richard. If we if say for example, obviously my the Romans in South Wales, we had 550 copies of them printed. They went like hotcakes. And then I had another 300 printed. They just went, and I thought, oh, for fuck's sake. So I had another about 300 printed, right? And I've still got like 40 of them left. And the point is that there's loads of stuff going to be picked up, right? So we can easily do another edition because whether you knew or you didn't know, there were two versions of the Barry book. I've got both. And I don't, there were mistakes in the first Barry book that were picked up. That's why they had another version. So I don't know what they were. I'm not sitting down to work it out.
Well, we can pick out the worst ones anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Right, anyway, I'll let you go and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Right. Cheers, Carl.
Cheers. Night, Richard.
Cheers,
Bye. Night. I don't know. There was nobody online at all, which is a bit of a shame. And thank you very much. And anyone watching this, it's been a long, heavy day, and I'm going to go. So, diolch yn fawr i chi, gwelwch chi eto. I look tired, don't I? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. What am I doing? Right. Nothing in that box 1, nothing in that box 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, nothing in that box 1, 2, nothing in that box 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,